3, 2, 1.
Overwatch Classic has arrived, and it's giving players a slice of the game's wild past, complete with hero stacking, clunky character kits, and quirks aplenty. For longtime fans, this is a trip down memory lane. For newcomers, it's like opening a time capsule of chaos. But let's not get too misty-eyed about this. Classic isn't so much a preview of the future as it is a playful reminder of Overwatch's early, somewhat awkward days. It's fun, yes, but is it a viable blueprint for where Overwatch should go? Probably not. Think of it more like flipping through an old scrapbook. It's charming, but you're reminded of why you grew past it. Anyway, hi, hello, my name's Tree, and I'm the gay Symmetra player you hate to see on your team. Let's get into the video. Let's start with hero stacking. In Overwatch Classic, hero stacking brings us back to an era of almost unrestricted gameplay where everyone could pick the same character. Now, depending on your perspective, that's either hilariously chaotic or deeply frustrating. On the one hand, seeing multiple Widows or Tracers blinking around the map is almost funny in its absurdity. On the other, it creates a kind of identity crisis for the heroes. When you can't make a call out without asking, wait, which Widow are we talking about? It's easy to see how teamwork loses focus, replaced by pure confusion. Instead of blending into a carefully balanced team composition, players are scattered, each trying to make their own impact in a space where impact can feel diluted. Then we have the character kits themselves, which highlight just how much Overwatch heroes have changed over the years. D.Va's fusion cannons, for example, turn her into a lumbering target anytime she fires, almost like a tank that's forgotten how to move. Compare that to her Overwatch 2 counterpart, where her mobility is part of her identity, allowing her to fire and reposition quickly. Similarly, Mercy's lack of Guardian Angel tech in Classic feels restrictive, a noticeable downgrade for players who have spent countless hours refining her movement tricks. And then there's Reaper, stuck in Wraith form for the full duration and unable to reload mid-escape. The Reaper players know in Overwatch 2 has an almost rhythmic flow to his abilities, but this older version stumbles, making his kit feel choppy and, frankly, a bit awkward. For newer players, these limitations probably feel strange and restrictive. They've learned Overwatch in a faster, more polished environment, so these mechanics likely feel like they're fighting against the game's flow. But for longtime fans, revisiting these quirks is part of the nostalgic appeal. Classic's heroes have rough edges, yes, but they're unique. There's a charm in these older mechanics that feels more personal, more experimental. Classic lets us go back to that rough around the edges version of Overwatch, but it also serves as a reminder of why these heroes evolved. More than that, Classic is a snapshot of a different mindset. One where Overwatch was less a refined, esports-ready experience, and more of that chaotic, sprawling playground. Today's Overwatch is strategic, polished, and designed for coordination, but Classic is raw chaos, and depending on your preferences, that's either its greatest strength or a sign of how far Overwatch has come. Classic may have nostalgic value, but it's a time capsule, not a viable format for Overwatch's future. While it's fun as a throwback, it's pretty clear that Overwatch was right to evolve past this mode. Now, let's talk about the theories, and yes, there are theories. The one suggesting that Blizzard is using Overwatch Classic to send a subtle message about 6v6. The idea is that Blizzard, in putting out this chaotic version of 6v6, is subtly encouraging players to stick with 5v5. It's not hard to see where the skepticism comes from. Overwatch fans have a complicated history with Blizzard. After years of ups and downs, fans tend to approach new developments with a bit of a side-eye. For some, Classic might feel like Blizzard is saying, look at this mess. Are you sure you want 6v6? But Blizzard has been fairly upfront about their intentions with Classic. According to the dev team, quote, Overwatch Classic is separate from our broader 6v6 plans. Overwatch Classic is meant to be a nostalgic experience, taking heroes, players, and the game back to moments in the game's history for limited time events. So, rather than a message on 6v6's viability, it's more like Blizzard saying, remember this? It's fun to revisit. In other words, Classic isn't Blizzard trying to bury 6v6, it's a nod to longtime fans who remember Overwatch's chaotic beginnings. And if Classic's goal is to remind us of Overwatch's evolution, it accomplishes that. Some characters like Reinhardt, Tracer, and Widowmaker haven't changed much. They're still close to their original designs. But for others, the difference is almost jarring. Symmetra, for instance, has gone through numerous reworks, and her original version feels almost like a completely different hero, and that's because she is. Mercy's mass resurrection is gone, and D.Va's defense matrix is now tied to a cooldown instead of a usage gauge. For players used to Overwatch 2, these changes might feel clunky and unfamiliar. Mercy in particular feels like she's missing her wings. Players who are used to Guardian Angel's movement tech are suddenly grounded in Classic, forced to adapt to a Mercy with limited mobility. Classic brings out the quirks of each hero, reminding us of a time when heroes had distinct, sometimes rigid roles. In today's Overwatch, roles are blended for balance, and the line between different DPS, support, and tank is intentionally flexible within their classes. But in Classic, hero identity is a little sharper, a little more defined. DPS players have more freedom to take risks without the modern support abilities like Kiriko Suzu or Baptiste Immortality Field shutting them down. Tanks, meanwhile, are scarce. You might see a Reinhardt or two, but if there's a stack, it's usually Roadhogs. Classic is a look back at when heroes felt a bit less streamlined and a bit more experimental, each one embracing a unique identity. Maybe it's a reminder to Blizzard that while balance is crucial, a hero's individual quirks can still have value. This isn't Blizzard's secret message on 6v6's future, it's just a fun way to revisit Overwatch's roots, yes, but I think it would be really interesting for us to revisit and revitalize old character archetypes, old character identities. Hero stacking in Overwatch Classic is like opening the floodgates to a kind of structured chaos. With no limit on hero selection, the team dynamic changes entirely. Instead of working as a team, it feels like each player is working in isolation. If everyone is Tracer, each Tracer is essentially competing with the others to make an impact. It's less, how can we work together, and more, who can stand out? In traditional Overwatch, synergy is key. The game is structured so that players have to coordinate ultimates, combine abilities, and position carefully. But in Classic, the team playstyle gets lost. With multiple Genjis or Tracers on the team, strategy becomes more about repetition. The first Genji's blade didn't work? Well, that's okay, we have another Genji. It's not about timing or skill synergy, it's about taking turns. Classic shifts the focus from group coordination to individual attempts, where each player tries to be the standout, making teamwork feel more optional than essential. Now, I do believe that this no-limit style might appeal to the casual player who wants freedom, but it's also the reason why Classic can't be taken as a model for open queue or role queue. Sure, open queue allows for role flexibility, but it doesn't devolve into this kind of free-for-all. Classic structure, or lack thereof, turns every match into a sandbox experience. It satisfies a nostalgic craving for players who want a no-rules mode, but it doesn't hold up as an argument for or against Overwatch's core queue structures. Oh my god, say that again 2 times fast, 5 times fast, 3 times fast, 10, maybe that. For a player with a competitive mindset, Classic's hero stacking can feel messy. A role queue player who's used to careful ult tracking, ability coordination, and positioning is left to figure out a game where these elements barely matter. They might find themselves counting not just 1 Mercy ultimate, but 2 or 3. It's almost impossible to track in the way role queue players are used to. So, while hero stacking might seem fun on the surface, it creates a dynamic that's completely different from either open or role queue. A chaotic novelty rather than a balanced framework. Now, here's the thing, and I think that this is more relevant to the overall conversation of 6v6 than Classic ever will be. The longevity of 6v6 hinges on one role more than any other: tank. Ideally, playing tank should be appealing. Reinhardt, for instance, has a core group of diehard fans who see him as Overwatch's ultimate protector, the shield bearer, the focal point of the team, the big guy with the goddamn hammer. But the reality of playing main tank in 6v6 is less heroic. Main tanks hold a lot of responsibility. They manage positioning, absorb damage, and often take the blame if a fight goes wrong. And without support's backup, a main tank quickly becomes a liability. Overwatch's most infamous metas, GOATs and Double Shield, place tanks at the center of the role ecosystem, but at a cost. DPS players, the game's largest part of the player base, were sidelined, left to play a role that was largely overshadowed by tank-centric play. These metas had their share of fans, especially among tanks and supports, but they also had their critics. For DPS, it was like playing who can shoot the rectangle harder. And in my memory, when Double Shield was the main meta, it was hard to understand what exactly was going on in the game sometimes. There would be so many lights and colors I just couldn't keep up. Most players gravitated toward off-tank, where they could make plays without the burden of responsibility. Blizzard's decision to switch to 5v5 addressed some of these issues, easing the pressure on tanks and opening up the role to a wider audience. With a single tank per team, players had more freedom to pick heroes without feeling bound by another tank's playstyle. Frequent balance updates have also helped keep Overwatch dynamic, avoiding the long, stale metas that characterized the original game. However, this came at the cost of losing the nuance between tank duos, like Reinhardt and Zarya, and that sucks. If 6v6 were to return, Blizzard would need to make the tank role consistently attractive without making it overbearing. Classic shows that tank play is both essential and challenging, and it highlights why tanks are both beloved and polarizing. Blizzard's ongoing challenge is to keep tanks fun, accessible, and powerful without making them overwhelming. In a game as fluid as Overwatch, balancing the tank role might be the key to 6v6's future. Overwatch Classic serves up a nostalgia-filled journey back to the game's roots, complete with hero stacking, chaotic team comps, and kits that are, let's be honest, a bit clunky. But for anyone seeing Classic as the next step toward a 6v6 comeback, it's not quite that. The return of 6v6 is already on the horizon, yet Classic isn't designed to shape that future. It's more of a standalone nod to where Overwatch began. Hero stacking might be a fun throwback for casual players, but it's less structured than open or role queue and doesn't exactly lend itself to sustainable gameplay. In the end though, this mode is a fun, sometimes cringe-worthy reminder of where Overwatch began, not necessarily where it's headed. For some, it's a refreshing trip down memory lane. For others, it's a reminder that Overwatch is best when it keeps moving forward. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you could give it a thumbs up. It lets me know you like this kind of content and helps it reach more people. And if you're interested in seeing more deep dives, discussions, or explorations of Overwatch and beyond, consider subscribing. Also, if you want to make sure you don't miss future uploads, hit that bell icon so you'll be notified whenever something new goes up. Thanks for watching, I'm Tree, and I'm... you know the rest. Bye.